My name is Neelish, and I'm part of Miss Bouger's Period 6 physics class. I researched the physicist Thomas Young. Now let me tell you a little about this English polymath. Young was born in Somerset, England on June 13, 1773. He had 9 brothers and sisters, and he was the oldest of them all. Surprisingly, by the age of 14, he was acquainted with 13 different languages. Some of these languages included French, Italian, Persian, and even Turkish. Thomas Young started studying medicine in London when he was 19. He attended the University of Edinburgh. 2 years later, he moved to Lower Saxony, Germany, and studied at the University of Göttingen. Here he obtained a degree of Doctor of Physics. And a year later, he began studying at Emmanuel College in Cambridge. After college, his uncle sadly passed away, but left him his entire estate. He was able to become financially stable, and thus established himself as a physician in London. In 1801, Young was appointed a professor at the natural philosophy at the Royal Institution. Here, he delivered 91 lectures. Sadly, he decided to retire from this professorship because he feared it would interfere with his medical endeavors. In 1807, all 91 of his lectures were published in the Course of Lectures on Natural Philosophy. Thomas Young decided to focus on his medical life. In 1811, he became a physician at St. George's Hospital. 3 years later, he was appointed to a committee where they discussed the potential dangers of bringing gas into London. In 1818, he was appointed as a secretary to the Board of Longitude, and in the same year, he was a superintendent of the H.M. Nautical Almanac Office. Now, the H.M. Nautical Almanac Office currently is called the United Kingdom Hydrographic Office. Here, it provides astronomical data for police, meteorologists, and different types of professions. Later in his life, Young developed a peculiar interest for life insurance. He was also one of 8 people chosen to be in the French Academy of Sciences, and a year later he was elected as a foreign member of the Royal Swedish Academy of Sciences. On May 10, 1829, Young sadly passed away. He was only 56 years old. Now, Young contributed to many scientific fields, but his most interesting discovery was his research done on the wave theory of light. In the past, Newton described light as composed of particles. Young tested this theory. He did this by shining a light on a thin piece of paper. On this paper, or card, he had 2 slits, and the light traveled through the slits and was reflected on an observation board. On this board, he saw different bands of darkness and brightness. By looking at this, he discovered that as light passed through the slits, they would separate and converge. It is then that he discovered that light traveled in waves and not particles. Here's a diagram of his experiment. As you can see, light was shined through the 2 slits, and different bands of darkness and brightness were formed on an observation board. Other than his research on light, Young discovered elasticity. This is also known as Young's modulus, and is basically the stress of an object associated with the strain. In 1801, he discovered the causes of astigmatism. Along with this, he also made a general rule for deciding how much of a drug or medicine to give a child. The formula was to take the adult dosage, multiply that by the child's age, and divide that by the sum of 12 and the child's age. Finally, Young also discovered a way to tune musical instruments, and this was called Young's temperament. To conclude Young's legacy, we know that he discovered that light is made up of waves and not particles. Along with this, Young helped to decipher the Rosetta Stone with his knowledge of Egyptian hieroglyphics. Young also was able to calculate approximate wavelengths of the 7 colors previously noted by Isaac Newton. And finally, Young had major discoveries about the eye. He discovered that the eye only needed to be able to perceive red, blue, and green in order to see every other color. Thanks for listening to my presentation.